The space between the stars had always been quiet. For 3,000 years, the beings of the Zephyrian Empire lived in this peaceful silence. They moved through the dark void like whispers, their crystal ships gliding softly from one star to another. To them, space was like a great temple where loud noises were not allowed. Valtar stood in the command center of the largest space station in the Empire. Through the clear walls, he could see the beautiful crystal cities floating in the darkness. Each city sparkled with soft blue light, and they moved in perfect patterns around their home star. Everything was calm. Everything was as it should be. The Zephyrians looked like tall, thin people made of living crystal. Their skin was clear like glass, and light moved through their bodies in gentle waves. When they spoke, their voices sounded like soft music. They had ruled over many different alien races for thousands of years, but they ruled with kindness. All the races in their empire lived in peace together. Valtar was the High Coordinator, which meant he was the leader of the entire empire. He was old, even by Zephyrian standards. He had lived for over 800 years and had seen the empire grow strong and peaceful. He liked the quiet, he liked the order. He liked knowing that tomorrow would be just like today. The other races in the empire were also quiet beings. The moth people communicated by changing the colors of their wings. The stone speakers sent messages through vibrations in rocks. The cloud dancers lived in the upper air of gas planets and moved like gentle winds. None of them made much noise. None of them hurried. None of them wanted to change the way things were. Their spaceships moved very slowly compared to light speed. It took many years to travel between star systems. But this was fine with everyone. They had time. They were patient. They believed that the universe had laws that could not be broken. The speed of light was the fastest anything could go. This was a fact as solid as mathematics. Their weapons were also quiet and peaceful. When conflicts happened, which was rare, they used sonic waves that could put enemies to sleep. They used light beams that could confuse rather than kill. War was something they had forgotten about long ago. Violence was considered crude and unnecessary. The Empire's scientists spent their time studying the movements of stars and planets. They made beautiful music from the sounds of cosmic radiation. They grew crystal gardens that took centuries to complete. Everything they did was slow, careful, and planned far in advance. On this particular day, Valtar was reviewing reports from the outer territories. Trade was flowing smoothly between the worlds. The harvest from the agricultural planets was good. The mining operations were producing enough crystals for the next 50 years of shipbuilding. Crime was almost non-existent. Disease had been eliminated decades ago. Everything was perfect. Then the alarm started. The sound was so unusual that, at first, Valtar did not understand what it was. The Zephyrians had not heard emergency alarms in over 200 years. The high-pitched wailing cut through the quiet of the command center like a knife through silk. "High Coordinator," called out Science Officer Renda, her crystal body flashing with confused colors. "We are detecting strange readings from the outer sensor grid." Valtar moved to her station. On the screen in front of them, waves of energy were showing up on the sensors. But these were not normal energy waves. They were wild and chaotic. They seemed to be tearing at the very fabric of space itself. What could cause such disturbances? Valtar asked. "Unknown, High Coordinator. The patterns make no sense according to our understanding of physics. It appears that something is creating tears in space-time." More officers gathered around the science station. Everyone was confused. Their instruments were showing things that should not be possible. Space itself seemed to be bending and twisting in ways that violated every law they knew. "Could it be a natural phenomenon?" asked Defense Coordinator Zalwyn. "Perhaps a new type of star collapse?" Renda checked her readings again. "No, Coordinator. These disturbances are moving, and they are moving faster than light speed." "Much faster?" The room fell silent. Faster than light travel was impossible. Every scientist in the Empire knew this. They had tried for thousands of years to break this barrier and had always failed. The universe simply did not allow it. Check the instruments, Veltar ordered. There must be an error. But as the minutes passed, more sensor stations across the Empire reported the same impossible readings. Something was moving through space, at speeds that should not exist. And whatever it was getting closer to their territory. The High Council was called into emergency session. Representatives from all the major races in the Empire gathered in the Great Crystal Chamber at the center of the capital city. The chamber had not been used for urgent meetings in over a century. The moth people fluttered their wings nervously, showing confused patterns of yellow and red. The stone speakers sent worried vibrations through the floor. The cloud dancers swirled anxiously in their floating containers. Everyone was afraid, though none of them wanted to say it out loud. "The readings are confirmed," announced Chief Scientist Mergath. "Multiple objects are approaching our outer territories at approximately 47 times the speed of light." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Even saying the number out loud seemed wrong. What manner of beings could possess such technology? Asked Elder Truthseer Curlin, one of the oldest Zephyrians alive. "We do not know," Mergath replied. "But based on the energy signatures, these objects appear to be artificial constructs, ships of some kind." "Could they be weapons?" asked Defense Coordinator Zalwyn. "Unknown. The energy they produce is incredibly chaotic. Our instruments can barely track their movements. Whatever propulsion system they use creates massive disturbances in subspace." Veltar felt something he had not experienced in centuries. Fear. Not for himself, but for the Empire he had spent his life protecting. The peaceful order they had built over 3,000 years suddenly seemed very fragile. "How long until they reach our territory?" he asked. "At their current speed, approximately 6 standard days. 6 days. In 6 days, everything they knew about the universe might change forever." The quiet of space, which had been their companion for so long, was about to be broken by something they could not understand or predict. As the council debated what to do, more reports came in. The mysterious objects were not just moving fast. They were moving in patterns that suggested intelligence. They seemed to be searching for something or running from something. Their course was erratic, desperate even. "Prepare the fleet," Veltar finally ordered. "But do not take aggressive action. If these beings possess technology so far beyond ours, we must be very careful." The council members nodded in agreement. Their ships were beautiful and advanced by their own standards, but they moved slowly and carried only defensive weapons. Against beings who could tear holes in space itself, they would be helpless in a fight. That night, Veltar stood alone in his private chamber looking out at the stars. For 3,000 years, his people had lived in harmony with the universe. They had accepted its laws and found peace within its limits. Now, something was coming that followed no laws they understood. The sky was still mostly silent. But in the distance, space itself was being twisted by forces beyond their comprehension. The age of quiet was ending, and none of them knew what would take its place. He could only hope that whatever was coming would bring wisdom along with its terrible power. The universe was about to become a much larger and more dangerous place. Tomorrow, the silence would be broken forever. The first human ship appeared without warning in the middle of Trade Route 7. One moment, the Zephyrian convoy was moving peacefully through space, their crystal ships carrying goods between the outer colonies. The next moment, reality itself seemed to tear open like cloth being ripped apart. Captain Velanara was commanding the trade convoy when it happened. She had been watching the gentle flow of cosmic dust outside her ship when space suddenly exploded with light and energy. A massive hole opened up in front of them, spitting out fire and radiation. Her instruments screamed warnings as something big and metal came tumbling out of the tier. The object was like nothing she had ever seen. It was crude and ugly compared to Zephyrian ships. Its hull was dark gray metal covered in scorch marks and dents. Strange symbols were painted on its side in bright yellow. Smoke and sparks were coming from several places on its surface. It looked like it had been in a terrible fight. "By the Crystal Throne," whispered her navigator Jenko. "What is that thing?" Before Velanara could answer, her communication officer's station lit up with signals. But these were not the soft musical tones that Zephyrian ships used to talk to each other. This was a harsh burst of electromagnetic noise that made their sensitive equipment buzz and crackle. "Captain," said Communication Officer Darla, her crystal body flashing with confused colors. "I am receiving a transmission, but it is in a completely unknown format. The computer is trying to translate." After a few moments, words began to come through their speakers. The voice was rough and tired, nothing like the gentle tones of Zephyrian's speech. "This is Captain Sarah Chun of the Terran Colonial Authority mining vessel Defiant Prospector. We are being pursued by hostile forces and request immediate sanctuary. Repeat, we need help now." Velanara had never heard the word Terran before. She had never heard anything like this voice. It was full of urgency and desperation. The being speaking seemed to be in great danger. "Unknown vessel," Velanara transmitted back. "This is Captain Velanara of the Zephyrian Trade Convoy Gentle Current. You have appeared in our territory without permission. Please explain your presence." "Look, Crystal Lady," came the reply, "I don't have time for formal introductions. We've got 3 Reaper ships right behind us, and they don't take prisoners. You need to get your people out of here right now." Velanara was shocked by the rudeness of the response. No one had spoken to her like that in her entire life. But before she could reply, her science officer called out in alarm, "Captain! More! Spatial tiers opening, multiple contacts incoming. 3 more holes ripped open in space near them." But these ships that came through were different from the first one. They were sleek and black, with no windows or markings. They moved like hunting animals, fast and deadly. As soon as they appeared, they began charging weapons that glowed with evil red light. "Oh, no," said the human captain's voice over the radio. "They found us. Sorry about this, folks, but you might want to clear the area." What happened next shocked Velanara to her core. The ugly human ship suddenly came alive with violence. Weapons that looked like they were made from mining equipment began firing at the black ships. The human vessel spun and twisted through space in ways that seemed to ignore basic physics. It moved like a wild animal fighting for its life. The 3 black ships attacked with coordinated precision. Their red beams cut through space where the human ship had been just moments before. But the human captain seemed to know exactly where they would shoot. She dodged and weaved between their attacks while firing back with whatever weapons she could use. "Genko," the human captain called out over the radio, "ram the one on the left. Emergency power to forward shields." Velanara watched in horror as the human ship deliberately crashed into one of the black vessels. The impact sent both ships spinning, but somehow the human ship kept fighting. Pieces of metal flew everywhere. The black ship's hull cracked open, and it began leaking some kind of green gas into space. The Zephyrian captain had never seen anything like this. In her culture, space combat was a careful, formal affair. Ships kept their distance and used precise, non-lethal weapons. This was pure chaos. This was madness, but it was also working. The human ship was using its mining equipment as weapons. It fired explosive charges meant for breaking asteroids. It used its cargo manipulator arms to grab chunks of debris and throw them at the enemy ships. When one of the black ships got too close, the human captain opened her cargo bay and ejected. A cloud of metal, or that confused the enemy's sensors. "Target their power cores," shouted the human captain. "If we can disable their drives, they can't follow us." The battle lasted only 10 minutes, but it felt like hours to Velanara. She watched the human ship take terrible damage while somehow staying in the fight. Its hull was torn open in several places. Its engines were smoking. But it kept moving, kept fighting, kept refusing to give up. Finally, one of the black ships exploded in a ball of green fire. The other 2, seeing that they were outmatched, began to retreat. They opened their own tiers in space and disappeared. As suddenly as they had come, the human ship drifted to a stop, badly damaged but still intact. Smoke was pouring from its engines, and several of its weapon systems were clearly destroyed, but it had won. "This is Captain Chun," came the tired voice over the radio. "Thanks for not running away, Crystal folks. Most people do when the Reapers show up. Velinara finally found her voice. Captain Chun, what were those vessels, and what are you? Those were harvester reconnaissance ships, Chun replied. We call them reapers because that's what they do. They harvest everything organic they find and turn it into more of themselves. As for what I am, well, I'm human. From a little planet called Earth, or what's left of it anyway. Are you injured? Do you need medical assistance? There was a laugh from the human ship, but it sounded sad rather than happy. Lady, we've been running for 6 months straight. Half my crew is injured, my ship is held together with spare parts and prayer, and we're about 1,000 light years from home, but we're alive, which is more than I can say for most of the colonies the Reapers hit. Velinara made a decision that would change the course of history. Captain Chun, I am authorizing emergency sanctuary status for your vessel. Please follow us to Kepler Station. Our medical facilities can help your crew. You sure about that? Crystal Lady, the Reapers don't give up easy. They'll keep coming after us. Anyone who helps us becomes a target. Velinara looked at her crew. They were all scared, confused, and uncertain. But they were also curious. This human had just shown them things they had never imagined possible. Fighting skills beyond anything they knew. Technology that could tear holes in space. And a courage that seemed to burn like a star. We are sure, Captain Chun, follow us. As the convoy changed course toward Kepler Station, Velinara sent an urgent message to High Coordinator Veltar. She tried to explain what she had seen, but the words seemed inadequate. How could she describe the violence? How could she explain the humans' desperate courage? How could she make them understand that everything they knew about the universe had just changed? The human ship followed them slowly, leaving a trail of debris and leaking atmosphere. But it kept moving. Just like its captain, it refused to give up. Behind them, space was quiet again. But Velinara knew the silence would not last. The humans had broken through into their peaceful world, and they had brought war with them. She just hoped they had also brought hope. The next 7 days changed everything for the Zephyrian Empire. After Captain Chin's ship arrived at Kepler Station, more tiers in space began opening everywhere. Each new arrival sent shockwaves through the peaceful realm that the Zephyrians had built over thousands of years. High Coordinator Veltar stood in the main observation deck of Kepler Station, watching the impossible sight before him. Dozens of human ships filled the space around the station. Each one was different from the others. Some were clearly military vessels, bristling with weapons and armor. Others looked like giant cargo ships, their hulls bulging with supplies and people. A few appeared to be cobbled together from parts of other ships, as if they had been built in a hurry from whatever materials were available. None of them looked like proper spaceships to Zephyrian eyes. They were loud, crude, and constantly leaking various gases and particles into space. Their engines burned bright and hot, creating trails of fire that hurt to look at. Worst of all, they kept arriving through those terrible tears in reality that made the Zephyrian sensitive instruments scream in pain. How many now? Veltar asked Science Officer Renda. 2,437 vessels. High Coordinator, she replied, her crystal body flickering with overwhelmed patterns. The largest fleet anyone has ever seen, and more keep coming every few hours. Each ship brought more humans. Veltar had never imagined that so many beings could exist in one place. The humans called themselves refugees, but there were millions of them. They had fled from something they called the harvester swarms, mechanical beings that consumed entire worlds and turned everything into more of themselves. Captain Chun had been moved to the medical bay, where Zephyrian healers were trying to help her injured crew. Veltar had visited her there and been shocked by what he saw. The humans were tough in ways he had never expected. Chin had burns covering half her body, but she was still giving orders to her crew. Her ship's engineer had lost an arm to some kind of energy weapon, but he was already drawing plans for repairs using Zephyrian technology. Your people are very resilient, Veltar had told Chun during his visit. Chun had laughed, though the sound was bitter. We have to be, Crystal Man. The universe keeps trying to kill us, so we got good at not dying. Now, a much larger human ship had arrived, and its commander wanted to meet with Veltar personally. The ship was called the Indomitable, and it was the size of a small city. Its hull was scarred from countless battles, but its weapons were still functional. The human who commanded it was called Admiral Marcus Rodriguez. Veltar had agreed to meet aboard the human ship, despite the concerns of his security staff. As his shuttle approached the Indomitable, he could see the differences between human and Zephyrian technology everywhere. The human ship was not beautiful like Zephyrian vessels. It was built for war, with thick armor and massive guns. But it also had something the Zephyrians had never achieved. It could move faster than light. The docking bay was a chaos of activity. Human crew members were everywhere, running between tasks, shouting orders, and working on repairs. They moved with an energy and urgency that made Veltar dizzy. Everything they did seemed to be done quickly, as if they never had enough time. Admiral Rodriguez met him at the airlock. The human was older than Captain Chun, with gray hair and scars on his face. His uniform was clean but worn, and he carried himself like someone who had seen too much fighting. When he spoke, his voice was deep and serious. "High Coordinator Veltar," Rodriguez said, extending his hand in what Veltar had learned was a human greeting. "Thank you for agreeing to meet. With me, I know our arrival has been disruptive." Veltar carefully took the offered hand. Human skin was warm and rough, very different from crystal. "Admiral Rodriguez, your people have certainly brought change to our territory. We are trying to understand your situation." Rodriguez led him through the ship's corridors. Everywhere Veltar looked, he saw things that should not be possible. The walls contained technology that seemed to bend the laws of physics. Screens showed star maps with routes that crossed impossible distances. Weapons that could destroy planets were stored next to medical supplies for treating the wounded. "Let me show you something," Rodriguez said, leading him to the ship's main command center. The command center was huge, filled with screens and control stations. Dozens of human officers worked at various tasks, their hands moving quickly over controls that glowed with strange lights. In the center of the room was a large table with a three-dimensional map floating above it. "This is what we're running from," Rodriguez said, pointing to a section of the map that glowed red. The red area was enormous. It covered hundreds of star systems, and it was growing. According to the map, the red zone represented space that had been completely consumed by the harvester swarms. Each red dot was a world with billions of living beings, Rodriguez explained. The harvesters arrived, stripped away everything organic, and converted it all into more machines. Then they moved on to the next system. Veltar stared at the map in horror. The scale of destruction was beyond anything he could comprehend. How many worlds? Over 3,000 so far? And they're not slowing down? Rodriguez touched a control, and the map showed projected paths. "According to our calculations, they'll reach your empire in about 5 of your standard time cycles." The room fell silent except for the hum of machinery. Veltar felt something cold growing in his chest. 5 cycles was no time at all. His people could not even fully evacuate one world in that time, let alone their entire empire. "What do you want from us?" Veltar asked. Rodriguez looked at him seriously. "Alliance. Your people have something we need? Safe space to regroup and plan? We have something you need. The ability to fight the swarms and actually hurt them. But your methods. The violence we witnessed." "I know it's hard to understand," Rodriguez said. "Your people have lived in peace for thousands of years. You've forgotten what it's like to fight for survival. But the harvesters don't negotiate. They don't take prisoners. They consume everything in their path." Rodriguez activated another part of the map, showing human colonies that had been destroyed. "We tried peaceful contact first. We sent diplomats, scientists, philosophers. The harvesters turned them all into raw materials within hours." Veltar watched the display showing the destruction of human worlds. Cities that had taken centuries to build were gone in days. Billions of lives snuffed out without mercy. "How did you escape?" Desperation and dumb luck, Rodriguez said with a bitter smile. One of our scientists figured out how to punch holes through dimensions. It tears up space pretty badly and the energy cost is enormous, but it lets us move faster than the swarms. Can follow the tears in space that our instruments detect. Yeah, sorry about that. We know it's painful for your people. But it was the only way to get here before the harvesters caught up. Rodriguez moved to another display showing technical specifications. We can teach your people how to build our hyperspace drives. We can show you how to turn civilian ships into weapons. We can train your military in combat tactics that actually work against the swarms. Veltar studied the human technology. It was crude compared to Zephyrian engineering, but it was also incredibly effective. These beings had solved problems in ways his people had never considered. What would you ask in return? Help us build a real fleet, Rodriguez said. Your manufacturing capabilities, combined with our weapon designs, could create something the harvesters have never faced before. A force that doesn't just run from them, but fights back and wins. And if we refuse? Rodriguez's expression became grim. Then in 5 cycles, your empire will be red dots on this map. And we'll keep running until there's nowhere left to run to. Veltar looked around the command center at the humans working frantically at their stations. These beings had lost almost everything, but they had not given up. They still fought. They still hoped. They still believed they could win. I will need to consult with the High Council, Veltar said finally. Of course, but don't take too long to decide. The swarms don't wait for anyone. As Veltar returned to his shuttle, he carried with him the weight of an impossible choice. His people could try to evacuate, abandoning 3,000 years of civilization. They could surrender and hope the harvesters would be merciful, though the humans said mercy was not something the machines understood, or they could stand and fight alongside these strange, violent, wonderful humans who had broken through their peaceful sky and brought both war and hope with them. The universe had become a much more dangerous place. But perhaps with the right allies, it could also become a place where freedom could survive. The High Council meeting lasted only 6 hours. For the Zephyrians, this was faster than any major decision had been made in over 2 centuries. But as High Coordinator Veltar presented Admiral Rodriguez's warning to the assembled representatives, the urgency became clear to everyone. Elder Truthseer Carolyn, the oldest member of the council, was the first to speak after Veltar finished his report. These humans ask us to abandon everything we believe about civilization, Carolyn said, his crystal body pulsing with worried light. They want us to learn violence. They want us to build weapons of destruction. They want us to become like them. Defense Coordinator Zalwin stood up from his seat. His normally calm demeanor was gone, replaced by something the council had rarely seen in him: fear. With respect, Elder Carolyn, I have reviewed the tactical data the humans provided. The harvester swarms are not like any enemy we have ever faced. Our traditional methods of conflict resolution will not work against machines that see all organic life as raw materials. The Moth People representative, Queen Salandra, fluttered her wings in patterns of deep concern. The colors that moved across her wings spoke of terrible anxiety. The humans show us images of destroyed worlds, she communicated through her wing patterns. If what they say is true, we face complete extinction. But if we follow their path, do we not become destroyers ourselves? Science Officer Rinda stepped forward with new data she had gathered from the human ships. I have been studying their technology, she announced. Their hyperspace drives do indeed work, though they create significant spatial distortions. More importantly, their weapon systems are far more advanced than our defensive capabilities. If they wanted to conquer us, they could do so easily. This caused murmurs throughout the council chamber. The Zephyrians had always assumed their peaceful nature was protected by their advanced defensive systems. The idea that they were completely vulnerable was shocking. But they have not attacked us, pointed out Trade Minister Helvin. They have asked for alliance, not surrender. They offer to share their technology freely. Veltar activated a holographic display showing the projected path of the harvester swarms. The red zone of destruction was moving steadily towards Zephyrian, space like a slow but unstoppable tide. We have approximately 4.5 cycles before the first Harvester scouts reach our outer territories, Veltar said. According to human projections, full invasion will begin shortly after that. The council chamber fell silent as everyone stared at the display. The mathematics were simple and terrifying. At their current evacuation capabilities, they could save perhaps 1% of their population before the harvesters arrived. Stone speaker, Elder Morthak sent vibrations through the chamber floor. His message was brief but clear. Choose survival. The Cloud Dancer representative flowing in. Her atmospheric container swirled in patterns that indicated agreement. The winds of change blow whether we wish them to or not. We must learn to move with them or be swept away. Defense Coordinator Zalwin presented the military analysis. I have consulted with Captain Chun and her engineering staff, he reported. They believe we can convert our manufacturing facilities to produce their weapon systems within 3 cycles. Our crystal-based technology actually provides some advantages they had not considered. What kind of advantages? Asked Elder Curlin. Our harmonic resonance systems can be modified to create what the humans call sonic cannons. Our crystal ships can channel and focus energy in ways their metal hulls cannot. Combined with their hyperspace technology, we could create vessels that are faster and more powerful than anything either of our species has built alone. This was the first hopeful news the Council had heard. The possibility that their peaceful technology could be turned into effective weapons was somehow less disturbing than simply copying human designs. Admiral Rodriguez had been invited to address the Council. When he entered the chamber, his presence seemed to fill the space with barely contained energy. The humans never seemed to be truly at rest, Veltar noticed. They always looked ready to move, to fight, to act. Honored counselors, Rodriguez began, I know what we're asking is difficult. We're asking you to change everything about how you live. But I want you to understand something important. We're not asking you to become like us. He activated his own display, showing images of human colonies before the harvester attacks. Before the swarms came, we were not a warlike species either. We had our conflicts, yes, but we also had art, music, philosophy, science. We built beautiful cities and explored the universe out of curiosity, not conquest. The images showed human worlds that looked surprisingly peaceful. Gardens filled with strange alien plants, libraries containing millions of books, children playing in parks under foreign suns. The harvesters took all of that away from us, Rodriguez continued. They forced us to become warriors or die, but we've never forgotten what we're fighting to protect. We're not fighting because we love war, we're fighting because we love life. Queen Salandra's wings showed patterns of deep consideration. How do we know that once we learn violence, we can unlearn it again? Rodriguez was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than before. You don't know. We don't know either. War changes everyone it touches. But I can tell you this. Extinction changes nothing because there's nothing left to change. The debate continued for another hour, but Veltar could see that the Council had already made their decision. The mathematics of survival were too clear to ignore. They could adapt and fight, or they could die with their principles intact. The vote was unanimous. Within hours, the greatest transformation in Zephyrian history began. Human engineers worked alongside Zephyrian scientists to modify crystal ships for combat. The peaceful harmonic resonance chambers that had once been used for meditation were reconfigured to generate devastating sonic attacks. Captain Chun, despite her injuries, supervised the installation of hyperspace drives on Zephyrian vessels. The crystal hulls proved to be much better at containing the dimensional stress than human metal, allowing for more stable jumps and faster travel. Your ships are actually going to be better than ours, Chun told Veltar as they watched the first modified Zephyrian cruiser undergo testing. That crystal matrix of yours can channel energy in ways we never imagined. The ship in the testing bay powered up its new weapon systems. What had once been a gentle musical hum became a deep, resonant note that could shatter asteroid-sized targets at considerable distance. Human military instructors began training Zephyrian defense forces in combat tactics. The lessons were difficult for beings who had known only peace, but they learned quickly. The Zephyrians discovered that their natural ability to coordinate through harmonic communication gave them advantages in space combat that humans envied. The Moth people learned to use their color-changing abilities to coordinate complex battle maneuvers. The Stone Speakers found that their vibration communication could jam enemy sensors. The Cloud Dancers proved to be natural pilots, able to navigate through three-dimensional combat spaces with incredible skill. But the most surprising development came when the species began working together in ways neither had expected. Human tactical thinking combined with Zephyrian precision created strategies that were both effective and elegant. Human durability paired with Zephyrian technology produced weapons that could strike with devastating force while remaining remarkably accurate. 3 cycles after the vote, the combined fleet was ready for testing. 50 ships, half human and half Zephyrian, formed up in space near the outer territories. Each vessel was a hybrid of both technologies. Crewed by mixed teams of humans and Zephyrians, Veltar stood on the bridge of the flagship Crystal Thunder, watching as the fleet prepared for its first real mission. They had received word that Harvester scouts were approaching the Kepler Junction, a critical hyperspace crossroads that controlled access to the inner territories. "All ships report ready," announced Communications Officer Darla, Admiral Rodriguez. Serving as Fleet Tactical Coordinator, activated the battle plan on the main display. "Remember," he said over the fleet-wide communication system, "the Harvesters expect us to run. They've never faced an enemy that stood and fought back with organized resistance. Today we show them something new." Veltar felt the ship's hyperspace drive engage. The familiar sensation of space tearing around them was still disturbing, but he was getting used to it. In moments, they would emerge at Kepler Junction and face their first real test against the Harvester swarms. The sky was no longer silent. It rang with the sounds of preparation, determination, and hope. Two very different species had found common ground in their shared desire to survive and protect what they loved. Now they would discover if their alliance was strong enough to turn the tide against extinction itself. The Kepler Junction had always been a place of peaceful trade. For hundreds of years, merchant ships from across the Empire had gathered at this crossroads where 3 major hyperspace routes met. Crystal platforms floated in the void, their surfaces covered with docking bays and trading posts. It was the economic heart of the outer territories. Now it was about to become a battlefield. High Coordinator Veltar stood on the bridge of the Crystal Thunder as the combined fleet dropped out of hyperspace near the junction. What they saw made his crystal body flash with alarm. The Harvester advance force was already there, and it was much larger than anyone had expected. 30 black ships hung in space around the trading platforms. Each one was sleek and deadly, their hulls reflecting no light at all. They moved with perfect coordination like parts of a single mind. Some were already attached to the crystal platforms, their drilling arms tearing into the structures to harvest the materials inside. "Admiral," called out Captain Chun from her position at the tactical station, "we're seeing at least 5 different ship classes. The big ones in the center are harvester carriers. They're the ones that process organic matter into new machines." Admiral Rodriguez studied the enemy formation on the main display. His experienced eyes took in every detail of the harvester deployment. "They're not expecting a fight," he said grimly. "They've spread out to maximize harvesting efficiency. That gives us an advantage, but not for long. Once they realize we're here, they'll regroup fast." Veltar watched the enemy ships through the view screen. He could see the trading platforms being torn apart, their crystal structures dissolving under the harvester machines. Thousands of years of careful construction was being destroyed in minutes. "Fleet-wide communication," Rodriguez ordered. "All ships, this is Admiral Rodriguez. Remember your training. Hit hard, hit fast, and stay mobile. The moment you stop moving, you're dead." The combined fleet moved into attack formation. Human ships took point positions, their heavy armor designed to absorb enemy fire. Zephyrian vessels formed the second wave, their crystal hulls glowing as they charged their sonic weapons. The plan was simple: surprise attack followed by coordinated strikes to break up the harvester formation. "Crystal thunder to all ships," Veltar transmitted. "Let us show these machines that not all organic life is helpless." "Attack!" The battle began with a sound that space had never heard before. 50 ships opened fire at once, their weapons creating a symphony of destruction that mixed human plasma cannons with Zephyrian sonic beams. The first wave of attacks caught the harvesters completely off guard. 3 enemy ships exploded immediately, their black hulls unable to withstand the combined firepower. 2 more began spinning out of control as sonic weapons disrupted their internal systems. For a moment, Veltar dared to hope that victory might come easily. Then the harvesters responded. The enemy ships moved with inhuman speed and precision. They abandoned their harvesting operations and formed into attack formations so quickly that they seemed to teleport. Red energy beams lanced out from their weapons, striking the Allied fleet with devastating accuracy. The human cruiser Defiance took a direct hit and exploded in a ball of fire. The Zephyrian destroyer Harmony's song lost its forward section to a harvester plasma burst. Within seconds, the battle became a chaotic melee of ships dodging and firing at point-blank range. "Evasive maneuvers," shouted Rodriguez as enemy fire bracketed the crystal thunder. "Don't let them get a target lock." Veltar watched in amazement as the human and Zephyrian crews worked together. Human pilots used their aggressive tactics to confuse the enemy, while Zephyrian navigators used their harmonic communication to coordinate complex maneuvers that kept the fleet one step ahead of destruction. "Captain," June's voice crackled over the communication system. "All ships, focus fire on the carriers. If we can take out their processing capability, they can't replace their losses." The fleet concentrated its attack on the massive harvester carriers at the center of the enemy formation. These ships were 3 times larger than anything in the Allied fleet, their hulls bristling with weapons and defensive systems. But they were also slower and less maneuverable than the smaller harvester ships. The first carrier began to show damage, as wave after wave of Allied fire struck its hull. Crystal ships used their sonic weapons to create resonance fractures in the enemy armor, while human vessels followed up with plasma cannon strikes that punched through the weakened sections. But the harvesters were learning too. They began targeting the Allied ships with their own sonic weapons, frequencies designed to shatter crystal hulls. Several Zephyrian vessels took critical damage before their crews could adjust their harmonic shields. "They're adapting to our tactics," reported Science Officer Renda. "The enemy is analyzing our weapon frequencies and developing countermeasures." "Then we adapt faster," said Rodriguez grimly. He opened a channel to all ships. "All vessels, implement random frequency modulation. Don't give them time to analyze our attacks." The battle raged for over an hour. Ships from both sides were destroyed, their wreckage adding to the debris field around the junction. But slowly, the tide began to turn in favor of the Alliance. The Zephyrians discovered that their crystal technology could do things the harvesters had never encountered. When the Moth People ship Rainbow Wing was damaged and losing power, its crew used their color-changing abilities to create light patterns that confused enemy targeting systems. The Stone Speaker vessel Deep Voice sent vibrations through space itself, disrupting harvester communications in ways the machines couldn't understand. The Cloud Dancers proved to be the most surprising fighters of all. Their ship, Wind Through Stars, moved through the battle like a living thing, dodging attacks that should have been impossible to avoid. Their natural ability to read air currents translated perfectly to reading energy patterns in space combat. "The big carrier is breaking apart," called out Captain Chun. "Its main reactor is going critical." The largest harvester ship began to glow from within as its power systems failed. Energy coursed along its hull like lightning, and then it exploded in a blast so bright that it lit up the entire battle area. The shockwave sent both Allied and enemy ships tumbling through space. When the light faded, only a dozen harvester ships remained. The loss of their primary carrier had disrupted their coordination, and the smaller ships began to retreat toward the edge of the system. "Let them go," ordered Rodriguez as some Allied captains prepared to pursue. "We've hurt them badly, but we can't afford to chase them into a trap." As the surviving harvester ships disappeared into hyperspace, the combined fleet began rescue operations. They searched through the wreckage for survivors and salvaged what they could from the destroyed trading platforms. The victory had come at a cost. 8 Allied ships had been destroyed and 12 more were badly damaged. But they had proven something important. The harvesters could be beaten. Over the following months, word of the victory at Kepler Junction spread throughout both human and Zephyrian space. More human refugee fleets arrived, bringing with them additional ships and technology. The Zephyrian Empire began converting more of its vessels for combat, and other peaceful races asked to join the alliance. The war was far from over. The main harvester fleet was still coming, and it would be much larger than the advance force they had just defeated. But something fundamental had changed in the galaxy. High Coordinator Veltar stood in the observation deck of New Harmony Station, the first joint human Zephyrian facility. Through the transparent walls, he could see ships from both species working together, their crews sharing knowledge and building new technologies that neither could have created alone. Human children played in the station's gardens alongside young Zephyrians, their laughter mixing with the harmonic songs of crystal beings. The cloud dancers had set up atmospheric chambers where they taught human pilots their movement techniques. The stone speakers worked with human engineers to develop new communication systems that could function across species barriers. The sky was no longer silent. It rang with the sounds of construction, conversation, and hope. Ships moved constantly between worlds, carrying supplies, technology, and people. The hyperspace routes blazed with activity as the alliance grew stronger. Admiral Rodriguez joined Veltar at the observation window. The human looked older than when they had first met, but his eyes held something they hadn't before: genuine optimism. "You know," Rodriguez said, "when we first broke through into your space, I thought we were just looking for a place to hide. I never imagined we'd find something like this." "What do you mean?" asked Veltar. Rodriguez gestured at the busy space around them, where beings from dozens of worlds worked together in harmony. "A future worth fighting for," he said simply. The silence of space had been broken forever. In its place was something infinitely more valuable: the sound of life itself, growing stronger and reaching for the stars together. The harvesters had taught them that the universe could be a dangerous place, but they had also proven that when different peoples chose to stand together, they could face any threat and emerge victorious. The galaxy would never be quiet again, and that was exactly as it should be.